Yeah, I said I'll sign up for both. Well, then I cast up. Am I good to start that?
Always.
Alright. Other people online?
Yes.
Alright, good morning everybody. I'm H1 Slagle. I'm a BMET in command. I'm one of the closer ones to know what's going on with medical logistics because we deal with shipping equipment and how all that stuff happens along with the supply side of the house. You should all be familiar with this topic. We're just going through a review, so I'm not going to go over every single detail to teach it all to you. I'm just going to go over highlights, emphasize what should be on the test, what I've seen on the test, and what I know others have seen on the test. So if you guys have seen something on it, chime in, just raise your hand, like, hey, that was a test question last cycle, something like that. So we know, like, hey, that's a red flag. That form has been there before, and I will emphasize the same thing for what I see. All right. So for this page right here, this slide, Defense Logistics Agency, Naval Supply Systems Command, and NAVMED.com, or Naval Medical Logistics Command. That last one is asked often. What does it stand for? Or it'll be used in a test, and it'll have that shortened version. All three of those could be in that question. You just need to understand what each of those stand for. All right? Now, logistics is just the acquisition, accounting, sustainment. It's the art of getting something, having something moved, anything to deal with the movement of items and obtaining. Chief Bureau of Medicine and Surgery, that's BUMED. They establish the standards for logistics to operate, basically. Obviously, they oversee a lot of things in the Navy. This is one of those as well. They establish the standard for organizational structure. So with that, it comes with purchasing, contracting, material receipt, all those things. We have all those in the hospital here under NMD. Every single one of those entities belong to NMD. So if you work with NMD at all, you will see every single one of those in our shops. All right, DLA. These guys are the big ones that have a depot of all the equipment that we use all the time, supplies that we use all the time. Right now, the big emphasis I've been seeing on the emails has been the COVID supplies. There was a huge surplus of that. So right now, they're just trying to keep us updated on the pricing so we can make those purchases for the goods. But it'll be anything that's in mass amounts. It could be gauze, it could be syringes, things like that. DLA is going to keep a large supply just resting there so we can rotate out and have a good source. All right, so technical review. That is the screening of all requisitions, which is requirements or obtainments, to verify that they're available from a government source, from a mandatory one. We can't just buy willy-nilly whoever we want to. We can't just go to Home Depot and buy it. No, we have agreements in place that force us to buy from mandated sources. So purchasing, that is procurement of action. So it's buying things. We have a team in this hospital, their whole job is to click purchase, basically. There's credit card holders, they're the people that approve the purchase. Then warehouse, storeroom, receipt control. When an item is purchased, it gets brought to the warehouse. And from there, the LSs and RSs, they check it out, they verify with the receipt what's supposed to be there, with what we purchased, and what is actually there. And we have that QA, that verification process happening there, and ensuring that we have everything going in and out that's supposed to. All right, stock control, that is the management of the inventory. So we have a process here in place where we do a daily random sample of inventory. And you do that throughout the week, and you have a better accountability, and you do that for the whole month, and you have a great accountability of how your equipment, or consumables are going in and out, how they're being maintained and distributed. Equipment management, those are the guys that oversee all the equipment in the command. Not the BMETs, but there's a civilian, usually hired, that manages the equipment and where it's supposed to be for accountability reasons. Biomedical equipment maintenance, that's me. We maintain the maintenance and the repairs for all the equipment. Central supply. When you guys need to do a resupply, a lot of you probably supply POs or will be or have been. You've dealt with central supply quite often, trying to get your resupply for your tongue compressors, etc. That's what they do. You'll be dealing with direct contact with LSs and RSs most of the time in large commands. So you all have the corpsman manual. I said we're all corpsmen here. Well, they have the Naval Supply Systems Command NAVSUP manual. That gives them guidance on logistics, and that's for procedures afloat, procedures appendices, and ashore. So if you're on a ship, you will rely on this manual and that certain volume for what you're supposed to do. If you're in a hospital or in a shore command, it will go to the same thing, and it should give you all the requirements for you to be successful and how you meet those.
So this manual, there's one that I have confused it with before. I'm going to tell you right now. There's also a P486, and that one is your food service management manual. So know that P485 is for logistics, and 486 is for food service management.
So a test question for this one would be, if you are in a supply shop or you're trying to find an answer for movement of items on a ship, you would see P485 NAVSUP. You would see DLA P485, NAVSUP P486. You need to differentiate. You know for a fact that is the answer. And volume. If it's in red on this slide, I would recommend knowing it. Remember, they only pull a few questions per section. So you try to highlight, what are the biggies? What are they actually wanting us to know? It's not really important to know the history of this section. Just know the manuals and a few of the other numbers.
They usually ask when it changed from.
If there is a change,
yeah.
yes.
Well, from the Brooklyn location to,
So you've seen that on a test
Yeah.
before? Okay.
Wow, that's
So we'll go back
wild.
to that real quick. What was the question that you saw in the past?
so they asked what year usually did the Naval Medical Supply Depot change, so it would be the 1853.
So
Removed from
1850.
Brooklyn.
So that one's
Yeah, so,
1952.
The 1952 is usually the answer.
That's wild that they threw that question on the
There you
test.
go.
Yeah, it's been on there multiple times.
So we've all seen the PII question, the HIPAA question, the Privacy Act of 1993 or 1, whatever it is. I haven't studied for it in a while, but
2005.
that would be one of those themed questions right there. So thank you for chiming in. Y'all can just take note of that. They have asked that before. So July 1952 slide. All right, so NAVSUP P409 is the mill strap. Oh, you pulled up your slides. Okay. Let me pull up my slides real quick. I have them on paper here. You can maybe jot this down if you're interested. Who here knows what mill strap is? There we go. All right. Mill strip. Military standard requisitioning and issue procedures. If you want to write it down, you can. Just so you have this. Military standard requisitioning and issue procedures. That is mill strip. All right. Mill strap, military standard transaction reporting and accounting procedures. All right. That's one of those manuals. Just recognize the number. If they ask for mill strip, mill strap, asking for NAVSUP, remember P409. All right, NAVMed P5132, that is the Medicine and Surgery Equipment Management Manual. That's my Bible. That's the DMED Bible. For the most part, that's how we govern how we do things in the hospital. DHA now has their own requirements, of course, but what I rely mostly on is the P5132. That gives me all the requirements to maintain, to have a schedule, all the requirements needed to make sure this hospital runs from a biomedical perspective. So if there's a maintenance question for medical equipment, P5132, NAVMed, P5132.
And you see why that one's a 5,000 out of 6,000, right? Because it's talking about the administration of how they're going to run this program and the procedures following it, not the actual medical treatment involved. So that's why it's going to be a 5,000 series type thing for the equipment management manual.
So procurement, it is to obtain materials and services. Contracting authority, that's dollar limitation, and the obtaining methods for the command and purchasing agents are restricted to. All right, commitment, that's when you have money committed to the purchase, but it's not spent yet. So whenever you try to make a purchase, a large purchase, the command has to balance a budget here. Usually call it off-tower and things like that. They have to pull money aside for that large purchase. Doesn't mean it's happened yet, but they do know the money is available, it's committed to that. Obligation. So that's when you agree to do something. That's what it is in the Navy as well. You have a vendor come in to install a dental chair, for example. And you say, hey, while you're here, can you take a look at this dental chair that's broken? You guys installed this last week. That is an unauthorized commitment. But if they agree to it, you've now obligated our support or our money for them to look at that dental chair, because they're gonna charge us for that. So you can't obligate us for something that you don't have permission to. And that goes into the unauthorized commitment. We've all been trained on that. We've done the GMT, right? So, all right. Ratification, that is when the process for UAC is reviewed. And it's not gonna be by you, not gonna be somebody by you, it's gonna be a third party. Now, I've seen that as a test question. Ratification, what is it, by the way? Priority designator, two-digit number used by the customer for the urgency. All right, if you filled out the forms before, there's a 13, a 6, and a 3. Those are the 3 numbers you need to know. 13, 6, and 3. That's a priority designator. 13 is just a routine purchase. You need to buy a whole bunch of tongue compressors. A 6 is going to be, we have a surgery coming up in about a month and a half, 2 months, and it requires a special item. There we go. A 3, that is urgent, has to happen right now for the most part. That is, hey, we have a surgery, emergency surgery or something scheduled for tomorrow, and we need a special device for it. So they need to order that, have it overnighted, or a vendor bring it in that morning. That's gonna be a very short notice tasker, that is urgent.
What was the third one?
13 is routine, 6 is usually like a month or 2, 3 is urgent. That is for your priority designator. Authorized requisitioner, that is somebody who's authorized to sign requisitions for supplies and services. That's your DIVO, department head. It's the person who's signing off those agreements, like, hey, we need to buy this, and they give the privilege. Micro purchase, anything under 3,000. Micro, under 3,000. All right?
That one is always, almost always on the test for your micro and macro purchases.
ServMart is just a location to purchase your administrative materials. ServMart for purchasing administrative cleaning supplies, things like that.
It's basically Office Max.
Yep. Federal acquisition regulation, just regulation for all of us for acquiring items with appropriated funds. Requisition is to request materials. Requisition, request. Bulk stock. All right, so we get the different things here. I've seen these asked before. So bulk stock is material in full, unbroken containers. When you guys get a shipment of your boxes that you ordered, whether it's toothpaste, tongue compressors, whatever, that's that thing that arrives to you typically, or arrives to the warehouse. You're gonna have 10,000 of them, not the 50 that get delivered to you. Consumable. It's done with use. After you're done using it, it gets thrown away. Material. All supplies, repair parts, equipment, equipage. Non-consumable. Self-explanatory. All right, repair parts. Self-explanatory. All right, reserve stock. So that is stock on standby for specific use. You can't use this because you're running low, you can't use it because you want to, it has a specific use. Whether it's a mission requirement or for a certain item to support it. Standard stock, that is material under the control of an inventory manager and with a NIN, or National Item Identification Number.
So an easy way to remember this, and I don't know if somebody's ever taught it to you. So you see the NIN, so it's like 9, like how you say it in German, right? But your National Item Identification Number is a 9-digit number. So it's an easy way to remember that. They'll ask how many digits that is.
All right, I mentioned OPTAR earlier. That's operating budget, basically. That is how much you have to spend. That is given to you, and that's a quarterly expense usually. Now, what do you do if you're out of money? Can you do anything if you have no money in your OPTAR? You can make a phone call and see if they're willing to pull from another department. So right now, y'all are running out of money because it's end of fiscal year funding, and you need to figure out a way to spend your money so they don't take it to the next fiscal. So department head, hey, find a bunch of thermometers we need to buy. So if you run out of money, but you do need something, they're gonna pull from that person that hasn't spent their money yet. Because if you didn't need the money, you would have spent it. How hard is that? And there you go, unused quarterly funds may be carried over to the next quarter. If it's not fiscal year funding, like we are right now, that does happen. First quarter, second quarter, third quarter can roll over to the next. Fourth quarter will not. That will be spent.
Your budgeting depends on how much you actually spend. So if you don't spend the amount you asked for the previous year, they're then now going to set your budget to whatever that was, if that makes sense. So say you had 8,000 and you only spent 6. Guess what? Your budget for the next fiscal year is going to be 6,000 because it's saying that you can survive off of $6,000 for your budget for the year. So that's why they push you to spend as much right before that year ends.
All right, federal supply classification system. It's designed to permit the classification of all items. So the FSC is going to allow a certain code to go on every single item for the most part. Not everything's going to have it, but for the most part. That's how we track exactly what item it is in a very large system. So FSC is made up of a 2-digit numeric code, federal supply group, and federal supply class. So you got the series, right? 6500 series is all your medical, dental, veterinary, and then it breaks down to the tertiary and whatever that fourth one is. I can't remember the name of it, but you'll see the changes through that. Just know the 6500 for medical stuff, and if you want to go more in depth for administrative or cleaning supplies and things like that, you can break down further.
I have a ditty for that I can give you guys later to help you remember the order. Because they do
More of
throw
that.
those on there.
Don't write all these down. I don't recommend it. Just know the basics of 6500 series, okay? Varies through 13. The FSC is identified by a 13-digit stock number or national stock number, NSN. And that's where that code is given to every single item. So there's a large variety. I've seen questions on what the 3 different NINs, NCB, and FSCs are. Like, what is the first 4? What would be the middle 2? Know the differences between those 3 categories, what they are. All right, so supply levels by numerical terms or months of usage. Operating level, that is how much to sustain your operations at the time. Safety level is just above the operational level. So that's when you always have a little bit of extra, a little bit of backup, right? And then the stockage objective, that is the minimum quantity to support that operation. So let's say you're going on the comfort mission and you're going on that for 4 months. You should have supplies to support that mission for that 4 months. And that would be to cover your operating level, your safety level, and ultimately your stockage objective. They've already done these enough times to know how much supplies they're going to be using. So that would be a great way to show your AMOLs and AGOLs they're supporting your stockage objective. Requisitioning objective, that's the maximum quantity of stock that should be kept. That is the max. So like for COVID, we had all of those COVID swabs, right? So we had a ton for requisitioning objective because we're gonna be going through those like crazy. Tongue depressors go through all the time, gauze, we go through it all the time, dental has certain consumables they go through all the time. So you only want so much of it though. You don't need to have, like everybody did with toilet paper during COVID, and they overstocked like crazy. You shouldn't be going that way.
So you should put a star on this slide. They usually like to ask at least one of these terms on the test.
Okay, so SAMS, Snap Automated Medical Systems. That is your shipboard computer program used to track all aspects of medical supply. I've absolutely seen SAMS on there. So know what it stands for, and that is for shipboard program used to track all aspects of medical supply. DD Form 1348, that's the order standard stock with an NSN. And know that it's a DD form. And DD Form 1348 Tax 6, requesting materials that aren't with an NSN. Know the difference between the two? And then 1149, that is requesting or requisition and invoice shipping document. So if you need to move something, or you're requesting something, you can use the 1149. Know the difference between those. All right, order for supplies and services in 1155. Make sure you understand the difference. So that's for open market order. I mentioned earlier how you're required to go through certain vendors because we have contractual obligations. If it's not met, then you can go to the open market. And that means you can put it out there and companies can bid on that service. So let's say we're trying to get a service for our MRI units to be maintained for a year. We already have a contract in place for that, it's mandated. but that's just an example for today. We put that out into the internet on a certain website, and a company can bid on that service to maintain that equipment, or to maintain those floors in that office space. And we get to pick the bid that gets put in. Naturally, we go with the cheapest bidder. Any questions on that? All right, controlled substances inventory, conducted monthly. That's a test question, all the time. So, conducted monthly, unannounced inventory for a controlled substances inventory board. They'll usually tie this into pharmacy, but you have narcotics in there, so you have to do the accountability. Monthly, unannounced inventory. It's not in this slide, but please verify how many people must be conducted and what their pay grades are. You will have to have an officer, a khaki of a sort in there. Okay? Bulkhead to bulkhead conducted annually. It's a physical count of everything in that specific storeroom or wherever it's going to be. And if it falls below 90%, when you do a random sampling, you have to do it. So conducted annually, or when you do a random that falls under 90%, you do bulkhead to bulkhead. What is another time you do bulkhead to bulkhead that's not mentioned here? Anybody know? Change of command. I reckon y'all were here when that happened, for some of you were. All right, change of command, annually, random sampling under 90% is a bulkhead to bulkhead. Specific commodity inventory. You count everything physically under the same cognizance, symbol, or federal supply class. So if you need to count all the gauze, all the tongue compressors, things like that. Special material inventory. So because of its unique characteristics, you have to find out how many you have. I can always relate to COVID for a lot of these things. We needed to have reefers or specific kinds of deep freezers in place to support some of the COVID requirements for long-term storage of items. Now, we had to do a special material inventory of how many specific reefers or freezers we had that could maintain below 0 degrees Celsius for X amount of time if we're to be offline. So that would be one of those circumstances. We need to make sure this requirement, we need to find out how many we have of this requirement. It's not a routine, hey, how many deep freezers do we have? It's no, how many meet this specific criteria? That'd be an example. Spot inventory, unscheduled type of physical inventory. So hey, somebody went into your little bedroom, there was no tongue compressors. Well, we need to do a spot inventory now to find out, are we out or not? Location surveys. Goal is to have 98% of actual stock locations in each in that location, right? That falls with biomedical equipment too. So our goal every single month is to achieve 98% maintenance. That means everything is found up to 90% and it's maintained correctly. 98% is the goal. Velocity inventory, that is the items that are on a relatively high turnover rate. I keep touching on like tongue compressors, there's a few dental things, gauze, high turnover. We use them every single patient. Gloves, every single patient, right? That'd be considered a velocity inventory. Random sampling, that's when you're going through and just measuring a random thing of material on hand. All right, aisles should be wide enough to support 1.5 times the width of a large cart or vehicle used. So if you have a cart in your shop, make sure it's 1.5 times the width of that so you can turn it around safely without bumping into anything. And the next one, I've seen that on countless tests. 18 inches for boxes or anything stored below sprinkler heads. You've all seen that one. All right, so 18 inches below the sprinkler heads. Unit of issue is how many are being sold by the distributor. It's not how many boxes, not how many crates, it's how many specific items. Sorry, how it's packaged. Take that back. That is how it literally is packaged. So if you're making a purchase on your supply program, Dimmels, you can click on buy 4 packages. And when it gets delivered to you, it came in 4 packages. In those packages, you had 60 of each item in a crate. And inside of that, you have 100 individuals. So you just bought 600 instead of 4. That's an example of why it's important to know the difference with how that unit of issue is. All right, report of discrepancy, SF364. This was on my test recently. SF364, and that is the shipping discrepancy. So I had a medical chair that was delivered, broken. I would do an SF364. And if it's missing something, SF364, it's packaging discrepancy. And that came from the vendor, or the shipper, wrong. The questions on my test, I have seen on your test. Surprisingly, trying to pick up Chief, the test questions are relatively the same. I did not know that until my recent test. So SF364, don't be surprised if it's on y'all's test. And SF365 was the other option on that test. That was definitely the wrong answer, and I chose it. All right, hazardous material, that is compressed gases, anything that can be a fire hazard or otherwise dangerous. J-stock is unsuitable for use. That could be anything that's expired or obsolete. They found a recall on it, it's gotta be separated. Or we no longer support that item. DIMLs, that is what we use to manage our medical logistics support in a hospital setting. It's all your supply, all your equipment, all that stuff is managed through DIMLs. Defense Medical Logistics Standard Support. That is spelled out for a reason here, because that has been on the test before. Know what it stands for. Scheduled maintenance, that is something that I typically perform as a BMET, and that is a routine maintenance, preventative maintenance of medical equipment or other equipment. Unscheduled, something's broken, I need to fix it. That's it. All right, capitalized personal property has to meet these requirements. Greater than $250,000, all right? Think capitalized personal property, $250,000. Minor personal property, between $5,000, less than $250,000, all right? Know the differences in these range. I have seen those on the tests. And then sub-minor, 5,000 or less. So know those three numbers with the capitalized, the minor personal, sub-minor personal, and then the HIPAA. Know how that's spelled out. It's not HIPPA, which will be one of the answers. It's not any of those other variations of the spelling. Know the date as well. That will change on your test. So the reds on this slide are very important for previous tests, and I'm sure they'll be there. Y'all good on writing this stuff down? Okay. All right. Safe Medical Devices Act of 1990. To make sure everything is reported whenever there's a safety issue. So for a while there, not everything was reported when there was a patient burn on an ESU, for example. You think that's a big deal, but apparently in the past it wasn't that big of a deal because maybe it was user error. Well, it turns out it wasn't always user error. So we report all serious injuries, illnesses, anything to deal with our equipment or our devices causing an issue to a patient. Safety is paramount, right? So we have type 1, type 2, and type 3 of equipments when it comes to reporting. We have type 1, which is materials determined to be harmful or defective, causing illness or death. So, or serious illness. So type 1 is material causing serious illness or death. Type 2 material, other than equipment, deemed unsuitable for use. Type 3 is equipment that has an issue that's causing a degradation of performance. Sometimes you get equipment that is just simply broken upon arrival, or something happens over time and it has to be reported up, and that's the unscheds, and then it gets reported beyond that as well too. Unscheds is unscheduled work orders or unscheduled maintenance. When I say unscheds, that's from all right, type complaints for type 1 must happen immediately. Remember, that is for the serious illness or death. Report type 1, happen immediately. Type 2 and type 3, 10 days from the incident. So type 1, report immediately. Type 2, type 3, report within 10 days. Level maintenance. Level 1, performance testing. That's user level maintenance. That is use the user, making sure your centrifuge is lubricated, making sure your centrifuge spins, making sure your ADEC dental chair has the filter replaced consistently. The trap is cleared. Level 2, that is my level maintenance. That is more in-depth, scheduled parts replacement, testing, make sure it spins the appropriate speed, and things like that. Level 3 is an overhaul. That is typically when we send it back to the manufacturer, they can do an overhaul on it, especially on green side. We have a lot of our things, equipment-wise, that gets overhauled at the depots. So Level 1, that's you. Level 2, that's the BMIT, me. Level 3, that's the overall, depot level. Depot level is usually the keyword on level 3 maintenance on that test. I've seen both depot, level 3. And preventive, I've seen all 3 of those as test questions. All right, that Med 6700/4 is the medical dental maintenance work order. When you guys put in a request online, we create the work order, the 6700 essentially. We create that for you, and that tells us the logging history of what we're doing, what the symptoms were, everything going for the work order. Report of survey, DD Form 200. All right, DD 200, that is your lost or damaged equipment. We come to you guys, say, hey, we can't find that equipment. You guys have all month to find it. If you don't, you gotta do DD 200. Some of you have dealt with these. Your department head or the custodian of your department will sign off on that because they are financially liable, because it's also for financial loss. That form is showing we can't find this, I owe this money, essentially, to the CO or to the Navy. Because the CO is going to be the ultimate one signing off. Commanding officers will be the ultimate authority signing off on an DD 200. I have seen items lost, DH or the department head had to sign off on DD 200, and they had to pay out of pocket to replace that to the command. And that was I believe, a $27,000 defib. It is very serious with how medical equipment is maintained, and a lot of commands. Not all commands, a lot of commands. All right. Authorized medical allowance list, that's the AMAL, all right? That is a list saying this is what we have required to support that mission or that supply block management. All right. Usually when we say AMALs, we think the cans. These big green cans that look like Legos if you've never seen them before. But on the Comfort, you saw them. Those are AMALs and ADOLs for dental. Those items have a specific list to build them, to supply them. The list is the AMAL, not the actual can itself. Remember that. And that is the minimum amount of material to maintain that window of performance. That's it. All right. You guys have any questions? All right.